Hi everybody, it's Leanne again at Quilter's Cupboard in Uxbridge, Ontario. I'm here for another version of my But Wait, There's More video series, and today I've got another one of the Studio 180 tools that I'm really excited to share. I know I say every month that I'm super excited, but I am. This is one of my favorite tools. I love the versatility of it. Just wait till I show you all the things behind me that I can do with this, and then show you some samples of things that I have done with this. I really like the shape of this particular block. We're going to work with the V-Block tool from Studio 180 Design by Deb Tucker. There are other different kinds of names that you've probably heard this called, triangle and a square. There are a couple of other different kinds of rulers out there that can get you this kind of shape without it being oversized and trimmed down. As you know, that's my real key. That's the real reason I love these tools, is because you oversize your components, you trim them down so that your points are where they need to be. The seams line up where they're supposed to be. You've got 1/4 of an inch seam allowance around the edge beyond the points. All of that is detailed in the markings on the tool. There's a lot to look at on this tool, but it all does something important, and I'm going to walk you through what we're doing with them to help create some very cool shapes that can give you some of the looks like I've shown on my display board here. So the shape that we're looking for is one that is this particular shape. It is a triangle in the center and side triangles along the outside edge of it. And we're going to start with, how do we cut it? What sizes are we looking for? There's information on the side of the ruler right there for you, telling you what size of strips you're cutting to work with. So I have some 5-inch strips cut here. That will make me a 4-inch finished unit. It tells you along the edge here, whatever size of finished unit you're looking for, what size to cut your strip. And in this case, I'm going to say, okay, I'm making a 4-inch finished unit. 4-inch finished units are great because you can use them in a 9-patch component to make a 12-inch block. How many patterns do you see out there that are 12-inch sampler blocks, or 12-inch blocks with sashing squares and sashing strips, or turned on point, all that kind of thing. So it's a very versatile size, a very versatile kind of way to make a block. What we're going to do is walk through how to make each one of the components, the center and the side, and then how they get sewn together. So what we're looking at is the words that are on the ruler. Each one of them is for a various step. For this first one, we're going to make the center square. So we're actually looking for the words that say fold line for center triangle. We're going to work on that center triangle in our square. So when it says fold line, they're referring to the very first step, the very first time you're getting started out cutting your triangle. So I've got a width of fabric, piece of fabric here, 5 inches wide, and I'm going to start from the open end, and I'm going to fold it over, just like the words are telling us, fold line. So that fold line on your fabric is actually going to go right underneath your ruler. What we're looking for is, there's a dotted line here right underneath the words that said fold line for center triangle. That means that the triangle underneath it is going to come to a point. That's really important. Your center triangle is going to come to a point. We're going to make sure that it does. So I've got the bottom of my strip right underneath the line. It's highlighted. It says 4-inch finished units. So that's a double check. I know that that's the size I'm making. The fold line is along the fold of my fabric, and it comes to a point. You want to move your fabric around so that you're trimming off your selvage on both the top and the bottom piece, but it doesn't need to be much farther along than that. You just want to make sure that you're going to clean away the selvage. So I'm coming up the side of my ruler, the angled side of my ruler, and it's going to give me 2 pointed triangles. They are not an equilateral triangle. 2 sides are the same and 1 side is a different size. So that's an actual top point. So as you're stacking up the pieces that you cut, keep them facing the same direction. If you turn them around, they're not going to fit with the side pieces. Ask me how I know. This happens all the time when I'm teaching classes, etc. And it did to me too at the very beginning. So I kind of like to share tips that help people to recognize what has happened, what can happen, and how to move on. So I don't need these 2 pieces that are here I'm going to put them in a different pile. And now, so this was the piece that I cut off, right? I used that part of the fabric and that part of the ruler to cut my triangles. Now there are two things you can do here. You can keep the ruler in the same position and you can flip your fabric. If you want to do that, it's going to line your fabric right up underneath the part that you've cut, right underneath the line that says, the next set of words to look for, center triangle trim line. So when we look at that line, it goes right up to the top point. When I lay that over top of my fabric, you can see that it's going to come to a point when I trim the side of my ruler. I'm keeping the ruler in the same position. I'm always cutting the triangles on the angled side of the ruler. So you can do that with your fabric, or if you prefer to not flip around your fabric, if you're worried about it coming out of alignment, if you're worried about it not staying nice and smooth along the edge there, after you do that first cut, you can flip your ruler over. Not move the fabric, you move the ruler, flip it over. This is actually the only ruler of the Studio 180 line that I do that. I actually do flip the ruler over because I don't like to disturb the fabric. Some of them move and wiggle around a lot. Some of them can be a lot more wiggly and move around more, and I don't want them to come out of alignment underneath my ruler. So I'm going to then cut down the side of it, cut off another pair of triangles, flip them around so that my pile is going the same way. Then you're going to flip the ruler back over again. We're looking again for the line that says center triangle trim line. That's going to go right across the line that you've trimmed already. And you're using the same angled side of the ruler to cut your pointed triangle. So we're going to do that, trim it off, add another pair of them. We're cutting two of them together at a time. And again, you can decide, do you want to flip your fabric or do you want to flip the ruler? You're doing one or the other, not both. That's important. One or the other. You're either flipping your fabric or you're flipping your ruler. If you're watching Deb Tucker's videos, she does flip her fabric. So she flips her fabric, that way the ruler's staying in the same position. Just, slide your fabric around a little bit, get it lined back up again, and then your ruler goes back down on top, and you are cutting another pair of triangles. So you're looking basically for your strip to stay even across the bottom. It's okay if it moves a little bit. You don't want it moving a lot because that's going to then potentially change the angle of the sides. That's key. You want to make sure that the angle of the sides of your center triangle are staying the same. When we go to trim, we're going to trim the bottom, and we're going to trim the sides when we add them, but we're not trimming or changing the angle of the sides of this triangle that are going to get captured by the side triangle pieces here. So it's important when you're looking at this that stays underneath the lines of the ruler. So not only on the ruler are there lines with the words, but I've also taken a little bit of my glow line tape. You can take some pieces of cutting edge tape and highlight along the side of the lines that you're looking for. That really helps your eye to know what you're supposed to be looking at, because there are a lot of lines on here. They all do something, but there's lots of lines to flip around and go, okay, what am I looking for? So this way your eye knows exactly which lines you're looking for when you're cutting. So you're going to keep trimming, you're going to keep cutting your center triangles until you get to the end of your row. Again, like I said, you're either flipping the ruler or you're flipping your fabric, one or the other. So I would keep cutting until I get to the end of my width of fabric. So I'm going to move along like this, line this up, and it is always coming to a point. Think about that center triangle is a point. You're going to keep it as a pointed triangle. I'm flipping my ruler again, and when you get to the end, you're going to see that you've got a piece that looks like this. It's not big enough to fit all the way underneath my ruler as it is. This is one of the reasons we start from the open end and work towards the folded end, because you can open it up, you can press that flat so that you can get yourself one more triangle. Depending on the size of the blocks that you're making, that can make a difference in whether or not you need to cut another whole strip of fabric. It can make a big difference in the actual usage of your fabric, getting the number of triangles that you need for your project. And I've shown you all of the cutting that I'd be doing as a right-handed person. When you are a left-handed person, you're going to turn the ruler so that it's vertical. There are lots and lots of the Studio 180 tools. That's exactly what we do. We turn the ruler so instead of it being horizontal based, it is vertical based. And then as a left-handed quilter, you're going to cut across the top of the ruler. We want to see that kind of safe cutting action. So I've opened up that fold. I can squeak myself out one more center triangle from my width of fabric. I'm left with an interesting little piece. Back to geometry class, parallelogram I think that's called. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 center triangles I got from a width of fabric cut in a 5-inch strip. Remember, that's making a 4-inch finished component. Okay, so that's the center triangle. Now when you want to do the side triangles, because there's 2 of those on each one of your blocks, we're going to use the same ruler. We're going to go to a strip of fabric. In this case, I'm using a background. Certainly you can reverse them. You can have a light center, and you can have colored points. It can be star points. They can be all different kinds of shapes, but it's the same size. So that's something to remember. We're still making 4-inch finished units. So my strips for the center as well as the sides are going to be the same size. Look at how many sizes are represented on the tool. One tool will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different sizes. That's really cool. I love that there's that much versatility in the one tool for so many different sizes, and wait till you see some things that I've gone from small to big in some of the samples that I'm going to show you. Okay, so when we are cutting these to start with, we are going to make sure, hang on a second, we're going to make sure that we're cutting with a straight edge to start with. We're not folding it to get rid of the selvage. I'm actually going to trim the selvage off to start with. So I've got my fabric lying down here. I'm going to take another ruler and lay it beside my strip, move the big one away, cut off the selvage that I don't need, and now I'm ready to go. I don't like seeing people cut in towards themselves along the side of the ruler. Safety, I'm all about safety when we're dealing with sharp implements, so try not to do that. Use a 2-ruler system, much better, much safer. Okay, so we're going to look at some of the same lines on the ruler, but something a little bit different. Now we're looking for side triangles. They're called different things. These are the center triangles, they're pointed. Now we're talking about side triangles. There's words on the ruler, again, pointing to us to what to look at. Cut line for side triangles. It's right there, it's in black and white. We shouldn't go wrong, and yet it can happen. Trust me, it can happen. Don't worry about it if it does. It's only fabric, we can always buy more, but let's try to have it go in the right way to start with. So I'm going to take the solid, see how it's a thicker solid line? It's not the dotted line that comes to a point. It's a solid, much thicker line. That's going to go along the edge that we've just evened up. We've got the top of the ruler up at the top of our strip, and we've got the line that says 4-inch finished unit. It's nicely sitting right across the bottom of our strip of fabric. So I'm going to cut up the side. First cut's always easy. Everybody says, oh, piece of cake. We're going to take these 2 pieces. Let's take this triangle that we've got, and it's going to be paired with this guy. We've cut 2 pieces of fabric because I left my fold of fabric together, and they're going to give me mirror images. So I'm going to be able to take that and open it up, and it's going to give me 2 pieces that will do each side of my pointed triangle. Remember I said that it's not an equilateral triangle. If you turn it around and you try to put your pieces on, one is going to be a long length and one is going to hang way over the bottom. That means this is supposed to be the bottom of the triangle, and you've twisted your triangle pile around, your center triangle pile around. It happens all the time, so don't worry about it. Just recognize that you're just going to turn it around. That's basically what we're looking to create. So we've got our first pair cut along, matched with our center triangle. Now what? Now we're going to turn the ruler around, and it's amazing how many times I see people doing this. And they're going, okay, now what am I doing? Where do I go? Go back to the beginning. The first cut's always easy. From there, we're going to rotate the ruler around 180 degrees. Kind of like a Frisbee. We're just going to take it from this positioning, right where we started from. The words are all facing you the right direction, and we're going to rotate it around. There's another line that comes down towards the bottom corner of the ruler. I have an older version of the ruler. There are no words along it. The line is there. I have a piece of my glow line tape. I could put a piece of cutting edge tape on it, something to help my eye to find it. See how that helps that line to stand right out? The new rulers actually have words written on there. It actually says side triangle trim number 2. Great. Thank you, Deb, for updating it for all the new quilters, anybody who's interested in the ruler. They don't have it before. If you have one of the older ones, certainly the line's still there. It just doesn't have the words on it. So make your eye something that will help it to find what it's looking for. And the reason I point this out so strongly is because we want to make sure that that piece that we're cutting off looks the same as the pieces we just cut off previously. I lots of times will take one of those pieces and lay it over top of the ruler, say, okay, does it look the same? Does it look the same size? The reason I do that is because there's another line up here that goes towards the corner, but do you see how much closer that is to the corner? And this one is wider. This has enough for seam allowance and trimming room. This one does not. If you have accidentally flipped your ruler and done this, and you go down to that, and you're cutting it, see how small that little point is? That's not what you want. This is the time where you don't flip the ruler. You go from the original positioning of the ruler, spin it 180 degrees, just like in her company name. Lay it down on top of your fabric. And if we want it to look the same as this, we want the bottom of the ruler now towards the bottom of your fabric coming to almost a point. It's got that little notch in there, but we don't want to cut this. That's way too wide a piece. I see that happen all the time too. That's why I'm pointing this out. Make sure that when you line your ruler up, that you've got it positioned so that it looks just like the shape that you first cut. We want the straight side of the ruler to be able to cut it. I'm going to be able to go up the side. That pair that I've trimmed off now is going to be exactly the same. I can open these guys up, and I've got enough to go with another center triangle. Now where do we go from here? Pick up the ruler, rotate it again 180 degrees. So we're back to triangle trim, side triangle trim number 1. Lay that thick line on it. Again, we want it to look like the pieces we've cut already. If we accidentally go to the dotted line, it's coming to a point. Wait, stop. These things came to a point, and we're not trimming the sides of them anymore. These, we want to be able to trim the sides, so we need room to trim. So we're going to slide it over. The thick triangle, or the thick line, pardon me, gives us our side triangles. So then we're able to lay that along the edge. We're able to cut up the angled side of the ruler. Again, we've got another pair. If you're using a cotton fabric that has a right and a wrong side, I like to recommend that you actually create your piles like this, because you want to know that they're right sides up along with the right side up of your center triangles so that you're going to sew them together properly. Again, ask me how I know. Want to try and help people avoid bringing out Jack the Ripper unnecessarily. So, spin the ruler. Again, we're bringing it down to the bottom of our strip, and we're going to cut up the side. So we want the angle of this underneath the line on the ruler, up the straight side. We've got another pair of side triangles. Now, if you are a left-handed quilter, we're going to do the same kind of thing. You're going to start with a cleaned up edge of the ruler. You're going to put the ruler vertical just like you did when you were cutting the center triangles. You're looking for the same line, the same solid line that says cut line 4 side triangles. You're going to read it upside down, but it's still there. So you're going to do that, and you're going to take your rotary cutter and you're going to cut across the angle on the top, just like we did with ours, except that your ruler is vertical. Then you're going to lift the ruler up You're going to rotate it the same 180 degrees, and you're going to lay it down. You're going to have a piece that's cut away from here, and you're going to lay it down so that you've got the cut line right underneath the line there. The same thing so that it looks just like these guys with a big enough notch to have your seam allowance and your room for trimming. So just going vertical instead of horizontal for the lefties. Okay, all right, so you're going to continue cutting across your whole strip. With these guys, when you get to the end, if you've got room left, you can't really open it up like we did with the center for this because you need a right and a left. So that can go into your stash bin for smaller projects. Alrighty, so that's the components of what you're going to be cutting when you're looking at the pieces that you've got. Center triangles, side triangles, and then we're going to have some fun and we're going to play and do different things beyond that. So I've got a couple of pieces here that are, I've got lots of green center triangles now, don't I? So I had a piece that, so there was my center triangle, and I sewed one of my side triangles on. It doesn't matter whether you start with the left-hand side first or the right-hand side first. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter whether you flick back and forth between one to the other. But what you do want to make sure is that you are sewing your right sides together, your fabric right sides together. I use batiks a lot, and lots of batiks, there's no difference between the right and the left, right and wrongs. There is a difference between right and left, not between right and wrong of fabric. But you can sew you can start on the right hand side, you can start on the left hand side. That part doesn't matter. What you're going to do is line up your points up here, and you're going to line up basically the point and the notch down at the bottom. So when you're looking at grabbing one of your triangles, and I'll do a close-up here. I'm going to take one of these guys and I'm going to lay it down so that this little point here lines up, and then this little guy, you can see how this notch in the side triangle just comes in line with the point of the triangle. Green matte, green fabric, a little close in color. But that's what I did here, sewed down and off the end. Then with these guys, you're going to press them out towards the side triangle. Think about how sharp a point that is up at the top. If you try to press those seams in towards the darker color, lots of times if that's the color and this is your light, and we tend to think of, oh, we have to press to the dark, it's not going to work very well. It's going to make a really big lump of fabric up at the top of your point there. So press out towards the side triangle. It helps to expose a nice sharp point on your triangle when you're sewing the second piece on and then trimming the whole thing down. So I've done the first one. Now I'm going to grab a triangle from the other pile and I'm going to sew it on the other side. Now when I'm lining this up, this time I'm going to line up the blunted edge with the point there, and it's going to come up to the point here. Now remember, we're oversizing. There's room for trimming. There's room for less stress. It doesn't have to be spot on exact. And that's one of the advantages to this process over one of the other rulers where you didn't have any wiggle room for trimming and you had to be exactly right with your cutting. You had to be exactly right with your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Everything had to line up just so, or it wasn't going to give you the sized piece that you needed. So with this, of course, we've got that trimming room. So you are going to be able to line this up. I go for, as close as I can get it. When you flip it over, you can see the point up here and the point down here. You can sew with your smaller triangle on the top, or you can sew with your larger triangle on the top and the smaller one on the bottom if you want to keep an eye on the edge of your center triangle and where your 1/4 inch seam allowance comes along. I do both. It depends on the mood, depends on the color, which one I want on the top, which one I want on the bottom. So when you've got that second side sewed on, it looks like this. You can see that there's a point up here. You can see that these fabrics are lined up pretty close, but pretty close is fine. They don't have to be spot on because we're going to be able to trim it. You can see that there's fabric hanging down the bottom. When I press this guy over and trim it, you'll see what I get to be able to trim away and what it does for me. Okay, So there's my triangle with the point at the top. Doesn't look anything like the letter V, does it? It's called a V block ruler. So think to yourself, I've sewn it like this, like a teepee almost. You know, you've got a point on the top of it. It's the point of a tower, but now we're going to trim it, turn it around so that it looks like the letter V. It's called a V block trimmer, so we're going to trim it looking like the letter V with the point towards our tummy, like we do with our flying geese. In this case, we were cutting with the ruler facing one direction. Now we're going to rotate it around so that we're going to cut with the squared off side when we're going to trim it down. We do that with a lot of rulers. We cut on the angled side one way, turn it around so that we're trimming on the squared off corner. Now we've got lines here and words and numbers, and we're looking at finished sizes. If we've got a line here that says finished sizes, we're looking for the little V that's right beside the number of the size that you are making. In this case, I'm making 4-inch sizes. So I want that cute little number 4 to go right down into the center of that V. And I've got stitching lines that are underneath the lines here and here. And before I even trim, I'm able to look at my 4.5-inch lines that represent the cut sizes. So we've got 2 different sizes represented on here. We've got finished sizes, and that number we want down into the point of the V. We've got cut sizes, that's our unfinished, what we're cutting it down to. So I want to make sure that I've got the 4.5-inch lines, fabric is peeking beyond that as well as beyond my ruler. If it's not, take off your side triangle. Sometimes it's the first, the one that you just added that needs to be repositioned. If that was the case, it would be this guy over here would be the second one that I would have added if it was not lining up underneath the lines on my ruler, or if it wasn't extending beyond the ruler properly. That's where I would want to trim it down, or sorry, take the stitches out and move it before I trim it down. But I'm going to say, okay, that's lined up beautifully. I'm going to trim up the side, pull my fabric away, trim across the top, pull my fabric away before I move the ruler. Lift the ruler, rotate the block 180 degrees. Now we're looking at the 4.5-inch lines. This is where I'd probably put my cutting edge tape back again. I've got my glow line tape highlighting the 4-inch size that I'm doing, but I also want to make sure that I'm looking at the 4.5 along the bottom so that I can trim that guy. Now, I don't have the same V lines to help me guide it into the right position. I'm looking at 4.5 that I'm trimming it down to, and there's an X up here. I want the point right up there to the top of the X. And the dotted line across here represents where your 1/4-inch seam allowance is going to go. So I know that it's going to come to the top of the point, and I know that it's going to come down the side, and it's going to intersect with my seam join right there to give me a good point at 1/4 inch away. And it should not come to the corner of your colors. And by that, I mean, see how the change in the colors between the side triangle and the center triangle don't come right out to the edge of the ruler? You don't want that, or it's not going to give you your 1/4-inch intersection where you need it to be 1/4 inch from the bottom of your block that you're sewing together to something. So that is what we're doing when we are cutting and piecing for a V-block unit. Easy peasy, right? And look at the things that I've got on the board behind me. I've got a little layout of the steps that I went through with you guys. So the center triangles and the side triangles, sewing the first one on, sewing the second one on. There you've got an oversized piece, and you can see it doesn't match exactly at the top. That doesn't matter. It doesn't match at the bottom. That doesn't matter. This guy would come down, and again, underneath the ruler, I'd be looking for a 4-inch size, and I'm looking to make sure I've got fabric beyond my 4.5 and around the edge of the ruler, and that guy's good to go ahead and to cut. It's really cool that sometimes the pattern has these as star points, Sometimes they could be a very cool border. Look at this one. I put them a variety of the center triangle is background and the side triangles are the color. And I've flipped these guys up and down and up and down. I love the effect of that. That would be a very cool border. It would be a very cool whole quilt. I've reversed them in the colors so that now we've got the center is color and the background is the side triangles. And if you pop those guys on top of each other, it would give a whole really cool zigzagging effect in a quilt if you wanted. That's a very neat effect, isn't it? There is actually a pattern that I have made that's called Firelight's Lane, and this particular pattern is actually not written as a V-block ruler pattern. It's from Sassafras Lane. It's really very cute, and you don't have to have a look at it as making it the way the pattern has got you making templates. I made my version of it using my V-block ruler. And there's my little sample of that guy. And it's a case of something similar to this where you have got chevrons of the different colors merging from one down to another, down to another, down to another. This was so much fun to make. And in the pattern, she gives you instructions on making it in multiple different sizes. You're going to modify the sizes that you cut, but your idea of the layout of the colors, the layout of the sizes of the strips that you need, the sizes of what your unfinished pieces should be, all of that's in the pattern. And I love that somebody does that work. I'm just going to modify it and use a different kind of ruler or get away from using a template to be able to create it. Love this. I have seen people make this in the largest size of a V-block unit, 6 inch, and it becomes really close to a bed-size quilt, a large lap size, and they call it 63 by 84, so that's a very good size when you've got something that big, but super cute to make. Seen it in lots of different kinds of colors. That is just V-blocks on top of V-blocks on top of V-blocks, and the colors are blending from one into another. Really cool effect. That was lots of fun to create. I taught that class several times to different guilds, etc. for workshops. It was a lot of fun. There was another pattern. This one actually is a Studio 180 pattern, and this one's called Tumbling Triangles. This is from the Modern 180 line within Studio 180, and this is all V-block triangles that are sewn together and sewn into little 4 patches and then tumbled around. This is my version of this in 2-inch finished squares. How super cute is that? And again, you can turn around and make this in bigger sizes, smaller sizes. So all of these little guys are 2-inch finished V-block squares, and it's such a cool effect, tumbling from dark down to light or light down to dark. I have a large bed-size version of this that I've done in blues and purples. It's hanging up in the attic in the store. You should check it out the next time you're in. That's a bed-size version. Again, there are 6 different sizes noted on the pattern, depending on whether you're making 1-inch finished blocks or 6-inch finished blocks. You can get a totally different sized quilt. So that one's lots of fun. Tumbling Triangles by Studio 180 Design. There are all kinds of blocks to do on the design sheet. So remember, I've talked about Tucker University before with some of my other videos that I've done. So there is a design sheet for V-block, and this is working with, again, 4-inch units. There are a whole bunch of different pattern ideas on the back here. And this was lots of fun when we worked through this in Tucker University classes that we were doing together in the store. And I have a couple versions here that I've made. Here's one of them that this was actually sidekick units. I'm going to show you how to do those in a minute. Here's another one that is V-block units with a high-low on it. I'm going to show you about that in a minute. I started this in reverse order. Oh my goodness. So instead, how about we look at this guy? So this one is, we've got half square triangles in the corner, we've got V-block units here, and here, and here, quarter square triangle, and shaded 4 patches. This is one of the patterns on the back of the V-block design sheet from Tucker University, and I've seen this done in Christmas fabrics. It's gorgeous. It can be the center block for a roundabout kind of quilt, one where you're doing multiple different rounds of piecing, or have it be a throw pillow cushion kind of thing if you wanted to. Any kind of fabrics that you want to feature in this, it's really cool. And again, of course, change up the size of the units. If you want to make this a much smaller one, you could change this down. Instead of 4-inch blocks, you could make them 1 or 2-inch blocks if you wanted to. And they would be much smaller and work into a smaller unit. Lots of fun. So again, that came from the back of the Tucker University design sheet, of which there's lots of different ideas. And on the design sheet, we go through something else that's not just the V-block unit, like these are up at the top, and these guys are down at the bottom. Dropped one on the floor. So these guys down here too are also the V-blocks. So I just laid them out again in a different kind of way to give you an idea of what they can look like, different colors, different merging. I really like the idea of these guys as a border as well. The fabrics look, or the blocks look really cute as a border around a quilt. But I also want to chat about what's called the sidekick and high-low. So I've got a technique sheet from Studio 180 Design called Sidekick and High-Low, and this uses the V-block ruler, so it's got that up in the corner. It has got pictorial instructions again of what you're doing, and it's got great instructions on how to create something that looks like half of a V-block. So when we're talking about a sidekick block, it's this guy here. So we've got one side of color, and the base is not a triangle. It doesn't look like the triangles here, does it? It starts as a square instead. So we're going to actually start with the same size of square as what we had cut our strips at. And I had a couple of green squares here. So we're dealing with 5-inch strips to make 4-inch blocks. So I'm going to have a 5-inch square. And think about what we're creating here. If we want to create a unit that's going to have a little side triangle like this, we don't want to take off a wide chunk. We only want to take off a pointed little chunk, just like what I've done here. So we're going to look for that dotted line again that tells us the fold line for center triangles. This is what we're actually creating, the line that we're cutting off for our base unit of our sidekick unit. And it walks us through all of that on the technique sheet. So we're actually going to cut that from our square. We're cutting away little tiny or little pointed triangles and leaving a base unit that looks like that. Then I'm going to be able to take the same side triangles that I cut before, and I'm going to add them onto it. So now I've got a sidekick unit of either color, or in this case it can be background that matches the square that we started with. If I was just leaving it at this particular component, which is fine, if I was doing that, I would, when I want to trim it down to 4.5 inches, because I'm still going to need to do that, I'm still going to look at similar lines on my ruler. I'm going to look at the 4-inch finished size coming down here, and I'm going to look at 4.5 inches all the way here to make sure I've got a little bit more play room, don't I, to be able to trim it down. But that's going to keep the angle of my sidekick unit exactly right, so that I've trimmed this down to a 4.5 inch unit. And they make really cool star points actually when you get a bunch of them spinning around each other. There's another version of this if you want to take this guy and turn it into what's called the high-low. So this technique sheet covers two. Talks about the sidekick and the high-low. So the front of it is all about your sidekick unit, and the back of it has got a great chart on it for sizes and shows you positioning for your square that's going to become the low part. So this is just going to be a square, and you're going to either press it in half or draw a line along the center corner to corner, and then you're going to stitch on that. You're gonna line it up with the corner of your block on your background, stitch that down like what I've done here. Get that little baby open up and cut away the back side and then trim it down. And we're looking for, when we want to trim that, we're looking for, again, the finished size of the block that we've got is 4 inches. We want that to go right into the point where those two fabrics meet. So this guy, it's a different angle. So it's obviously not going to line up under this line on the ruler, but this guy is. And we're going to still come to the point here. We're going to check and make sure we've got 4.5 inches covered by our fabric all the way around, and then we're going to be able to trim that down so we now have a little unit that has got a side kick and a little high-low piece on it. So super cute for border pieces if you want to. These are mirror images of each other. If we want to be able to create a mirror image of it, and that's going to come from when I cut these guys together. If this is the right side of my fabric facing towards me, this guy was the one that was on the bottom. So if you want mirror images, cut your fabrics so that you've still got them just like they come off the bolt, wrong sides together. And when you make the one cut, it's going to give you both the side kick left, when I sew that guy on there, and it's going to give me the side kick right when I sew that guy on there to give me those units. And then decide whether you're putting on the little high-low pieces on the corner or not. Really, really cute, aren't they? I had some fun experimenting with this prior to one of my Tucker University classes and came up with this particular block. And this one was a case where I created these guys. So this was a background piece. I was making a regular high-low, just a regular side kick rather, except that I wanted them all to face the same way. So I actually cut these squares and stuck them all up so that they were facing the same direction. Cut off my pointed triangle, sewed my dark blue triangle, side triangle onto the side, and then I took a 5-inch square of my darker teal colored fabric, made my heart go pitter-pat, and I drew a line corner to corner on that and sewed it on top of my pieced side kick piece. And you're going, wow, does that ever look different? So I would then have, instead of just a little square in the corner that only covers the background, now it's a big triangle square that is covering over part of my base V-block shape, my side kick, but that's okay. I'm still going to be able to trim it. I would trim off all of the extra that's on the back here. This is a big enough piece that I can salvage that and sew something else out of it. But when I want to cut it down, trim it down with the ruler, I'm going to be looking for a couple of things here. You're going, okay, what kind of lines am I looking for on here? I want the same line that if it's going to finish at a 4-inch unit, I still want the number 4 down here. I want to slide this along my line so that I'm below the top of my fabric, and I want to make sure that the angle of this line stays going the same angle the whole way along my half square triangle. So it's a half V-block side kick. I don't know what to call it yet, but I have got some actual lines within the ruler that don't have anything to do with making this kind of a shape, but I'm going to utilize those points here, 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 and keep this angle right over top of my number 4. I've got fabric beyond my 4.5 and beyond my ruler, so I can trim that guy down and know that this component and this component are going to be in exactly the same spot all the way around. And look how amazing that looks in a pinwheel or in a border or anything else that you might want to do with it, make it into star points. That's something that we see a lot, is these kinds of blocks turned into star points. When you've got blocks that are facing like this, and a fabric in the center, and there is purple star points, and a 9 patch when you've got some fabrics, some blocks in the corner, 4 patches. How many of you watched last month's video all about 4-patch square up? I had me some fun with that, didn't I? So pop some 4-patch units into the corner, and you can get, and in the center as well, and you get a really cool Irish chaining effect. So I was chatting about, briefly showed you the this unit here, which was from one of the Tucker University design sheet blocks. Here's those sidekick units, isn't it? Just like this, except in smaller, different colors. And we've got mirror images. And it creates almost a circling effect. I love the effect of this around an economy block in the center. So if these guys are 3-inch finished units, you can put a 6-inch block of whatever you want in the middle. It can be a piece of embroidery. It can be a multiple layered economy block. It could be a Lemoyne star. The sky's the limit. And then this gives kind of a cool effect circling around it, doesn't it? That's your mirror image, sidekick, and high-low blocks. But wait, there's more. You guys know me. I always have more to tempt and tease you with. This guy here is also from the Tucker University blocks. And this one is, these guys are high-low units with the color in the center, a background fabric out here. Take this block and turn it on its side. This is what we're doing. We're taking this guy is our sidekick part. Here's our little high-low part of it. This one over here is the mirror image. So that's this guy here doing that. And I love the effect of this. So you've got your high-low blocks all the way around, half-square triangles, regular half-square triangles in the corner. These are just squares in the center with a folded corner on them. A corner popped kind of unit. And that's a really neat block. I really like that. Again, it could be much bigger. If you had these guys as 6-inch blocks, that would be a 24-inch block completed. If you had them down as teeny tiny 1-inch blocks, that would be a 4-inch block completed. Super cute. So, lots of ideas on the back of the Tucker University design sheet. Lots of ideas for the sidekick and high-low blocks. And look at this quilt behind me. Any of you who saw my Tucker trimmer, the very first one in this, but wait, there's more video series that I did. This block, this quilt here is called New Year Star. And we have got high-low units here. These are our 4-inch finished high-low blocks. I have a little something that can help to highlight each one of the blocks. So there's a 4-inch finished high-low block. There's a 4-inch pinwheel with Tucker trimmer, half-square triangles in it. And we've got 4-inch finished combination units out around the edge. So we've got, they make this very cool mountaining effect. And they are actually mirror images of each other. This version is slightly different from this version. They're flipped around a little bit. See how the angle of the darkest purple is on a different side? I shared that when I was chatting about the combination units in the first video. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch the Tucker trimmer one. But I love the effect of these star points here. This is our sidekick high-low block around a pinwheel in the center. And it's so much about the value in the fabrics where you put them. It makes this super long star point as it comes into the half-square triangle pinwheel in the center. Great pattern. Again, lots of different sizes on the pattern. This is, I think, the lap size. There's a crib size that's just much smaller, and then there's a much bigger one as well. So change the size of the block. Again, it will change the size of your quilt, the overall effect of it. So that was super fun to make. Really enjoyed doing that one. And I have more to share with you. So hang on, I'm going to do a quick change and then I'll share a few more things. Hang on. Okay, I'm back. I've got a couple of other things on the board here for you to see. This was something that I had great fun discovering in one of the new Quilts and More magazines. This one is on display until the end of July, so you might still be able to find it in wherever you normally go to find your magazines, etc. This little pattern is called Show Your Colors. and I loved the look of it. And this is what I want everybody to be able to do, is to say when you find something like this, say, wait a minute, I know that shape. I know how to recognize what that shape is, being a V-block shape. I've seen Leanne do that with one of the Tucker rulers. And even though the pattern may recommend a different set of rulers or a template version of being able to make it, when you look at the pattern and say, okay, I recognize the components, I can see in there we have got a 3-inch squared block in the center. We've got a 3-inch V block. We've got another 3-inch V block up above it. We've got another 3-inch squared. It's all about changing the colors, changing the values. We've got a 3-inch finished half square triangles. These are all things I've shared with you guys. And I love the effect of pulling them all together and to create something that looks like this. This is the first block that I've made. I have multiple others in different stages to be able to create this pattern. This is from one of the batik lines of fabrics that we have here called Painted Blossoms. Absolutely loved working with that. And super cute. But I decided I was going to challenge myself. Okay, if I'm making these guys in 3-inch finished blocks, what would happen if I decided I wanted to go a little bit smaller? And look at this little gem here. So this little guy, these are 1-inch finished blocks, exactly the same components as what you see here. 1-inch finished V blocks. I have a little window so you can see that too. This is so cute. Who likes to work with miniatures? They're smaller pieces, they use less fabric, but they're just the same process and sometimes a little bit trickier to work on, but how cute is that? To be able to create little 1-inch finished V blocks. All of these guys were done with my same tool, with all my same markings. There's a 1-inch finished squared in the center. How precious is that? Another 1-inch finished squared on each of the sides. So the same tools will make large blocks to make large quilts. If you're a go king or go home kind of girl, that's great, we've got you covered. You can make this even bigger if you wanted by making these 4 or 5 or 6-inch finished blocks if you wanted to. You could add some more color into here by popping the corner. Wait till next month, I'm going to do the corner pop ruler for you guys, and wait till you see how you can jazz up quilt blocks like this with something like that. But to be able to go teeny tiny small, how adorable is that? To a medium size, to a large size, so much fun. And I love to be able to share all of that with you guys. This other sample that I have on the board here was made by my dear friend Diane. Remember in the wing clipper one, I shared her love links that she'd done small versions. She's discovered she likes to make minis too. Way to go, Diane. And she made little guys. These are 1.5-inch finished V blocks. So not quite as small as this. This is the next size up. And this is called Blooming Wallflowers. This is a pattern by Krista Watson. And this is, isn't it the coolest effect where you've got these V-block stars kind of merged together from one into another? So this and its blue mate, and the orange and its blue mate. And it's such a cool effect. It's built in rows, and instead of using templates, using your V-block ruler. That's what Diane did, and she did an amazing job with it. I was thrilled that she was willing to share it with me, to share with you guys today. I'm making a version of this with 6-inch finished blocks, nowhere near being done, using a dark gray grunge background. Oh, it's so cute. I'm so excited to work through it, but I haven't got it there. It's in my pile of UFOs, something that I'm continuing to plug away at every so often. But same thing. Bigger blocks will make a bigger quilt, but the number of blocks, the layout's going to be the same, and I'm using my V-block ruler for the large blocks, and look at how cute it does when you make the small blocks with it. Very, very versatile. I love to be able to pick up a magazine and spot a pattern that I like the looks of, I recognize the shapes in, to be able to say, okay, I'm not doing this, I'm not cutting out templates to be able to create those shapes. That was the other thing that I forgot to share with you in this version. I forgot to show you that not only is there the V block here, there's also sidekicks. Same thing that I showed you up on the board before. So we've got sidekick units here beside the square squares with the V blocks, mirror images of our sidekicks, each one of them. And it creates this intriguing line, especially when paired with the lines in the half square triangles and the V blocks down here, how the colors and the backgrounds and everything plays off of each other. I love how creative people's minds work, and I love to take the information that they've created there, utilize their pattern, buy the magazine, the pattern for the sizes of your background pieces and for the layout of the color ideas, etc. Pattern designers work really, really hard on creating things, but if there's a different way to make it, I can do that. I can do that. I know that I have the tools to be able to create those, have a good success rate, and to be able to share it with other people and watch their excitement as they're really excited to see teeny tiny versions come together, where the points are where they're supposed to be. Be happy with that. Bigger ones, watch them grow quickly and easily, and where you've got points that come together, it's nice to know that those are in the right place. That's a big part of why the lines on the rulers are important when you are trimming these guys up, because you want to know that that 3-inch V block is going to have that point in the center so that it lines right up with the point of the square squared, where it's supposed to be in the middle. So that this guy lines up right where the bottom of that triangle is for the sidekick unit. So that's the part that really excites me, when all of those work really well and I know how to get there. I know how to take a pattern that has templates in the pattern. I'm not interested in that, but I know how to do it with my V-block tool. But wait, there's still more. Hang on. Okay, I'm back. Got something else here to share with you. This little pattern that I've got up on the wall here was just something I was playing with. This was created from a bunch of I Spy fabrics that I had in 5-inch squares. Now when we think 5-inch squares, what do we think of? Do we think of charm packs? All these little beauties that are all the different fabrics represented in the fabric line. This is from our Painted Blossoms line of batiks. I'm really enjoying working with them. I've made a couple of different block patterns out of them. Amazing fabrics in here, 5-inch squares. And what can we get from 5 inches when we're thinking about our V block? On the pattern, on the ruler here, it said 5-inch strips will give me 4-inch units. But what if I have 5-inch squares? Can I do the same thing? Yes, you can. What 5-inch squares will do is they'll give you 4-inch finished units, just like these guys were, and then you can decide what to do with them. So for this particular pattern, I just took a whole bunch of 5-inch squares, cut them down, and flipped them up and down and up and down and up and down, and then added a bit of sashing into it, and it became this super fun I Spy quilt. Great for kids, great for using up 5-inch squares, charm packs that you've got. This comes together so quickly and easily. It would be an amazing quilt for an outreach program, a donation program, anything like that. How many of us have got either fabrics that, you know, easy to cut into 5-inch squares, 5-inch strips to use, etc. Create blocks like this, have some fun with it. When we're talking 5-inch squares, take the squares that you've got, and in this case I've got 2 of them together. Some charm packs are all different. Some may have a couple of them that are the same. In this case, remember the first set of instructions said fold line. Think way back to the beginning of my video. I was talking about the fold line when I had my green strip out. Use the same kind of thinking, and this time we're going to look at a fold line in the square. So I'm going to put the fold line for my center triangle. I've taken those 2 squares. You can work with individual squares if you want to, but I'm comfortable doing 2 of them together. I don't recommend any more than that because you're going to end up with a thicker bunch underneath the fold. We've already got 4 layers of fabric here because it's folded over. 4 squares would make 8 layers of fabric. So that's too thick and you're not going to get an accurate point, but you still will from 2 squares. So line it up so that we're thinking about the center triangle. So we've got a point. right underneath our dotted line there, and we're going to cut up the side of that, and we now have 2 center triangles. Exactly the same as what I did with the strip of the greens, but instead of me flipping my ruler or flipping the strip around, I'm just going to grab the next pair of 5-inch squares, and I'm going to fold them over, and I'm going to line up the line on the ruler that says fold line. This really helps to follow the instructions because we've got folds in each one of these now, don't we? Fold line for our center triangles, and again up the side, and now we've got 2 more. I'm going to be able to take the same process that I used to cut the side triangles for the green ones, and I'm going to be able to take those exact same ones from a strip. So from my background, it's easy to work with a long strip of fabric with the fabric, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to open up your pair, and we're going to sew those together to get your V blocks that are all shaped like this. And so you can do the same thing that I did here. You can go up and down and create different, like the visual of this. I love the zigzagging kind of effect that this did in here. I know that it's white when it gets sewn together with a nice white batting. They do make white batting. Did everybody know that? If you've got a quilt with a white background, go for a white batting as well, and it really helps to prevent sort of any shadowing that sometimes can happen with a cream batting. So go for a white bleached batting. Okay, so you can do that. Flip them up and down, and then a bit of sashing in between, and that was the equivalent of 1 charm pack. There was 42 squares in there. So super cute. Not a bad size to be able to make. I don't have the dimensions on it at the moment, but there's even more that you can do with these guys. Remember how each one of these had 2 the same color in my charm pack? What if you want to sew them together? What if you'd like to make diamonds out of V blocks? When you sew them end to end, that's what you're getting, aren't you? You're getting some diamond shapes, just like that. And when you sew them to each other, put a little half one up at the top. Let's go for a different color. It needs to look different. So let's go for this guy. Put this guy up at the top. Then start your next row with a full one up at the top. And then carry on down with a bunch of full V blocks sewn to each other. Are you seeing where I'm going with this? Isn't this pretty? I love these fabrics. They are so pretty. Anything will work. If you're a Kim Deal fan, if you're a Kansas Trouble fan, if you want to do something like this with bright colored kids fabrics, if you want to do this in Christmas colors or Halloween or fall, anything like that. Now we get down to the bottom. You can make this as big or as small as you want. This would make an amazing table runner too, wouldn't it? Oh my goodness, lots of ideas rolling around in my head for that. Then just take one of your regular V blocks and have that be on the bottom. And now you've got an offset diamond visual. Look at what's happening here with the zigzagging effect of this. How exciting is this? Couple of charm packs and you've got yourself a lap size quilt. Go more than that. Shop through your stash, find all different kinds of fabrics, and make the quilt literally as big as you want. But I love the effect of that. And you can go scrappy if you want. If you want them to be different fabrics, top and bottom, certainly you can go scrappy. I kind of like the diamonding look of them. The effect of that is really neat. And I got a lot of these guys from my one charm pack. I started with 1 charm pack and you guys saw me open the second one here to show you the cutting that I did for these guys. Now, you're going to look at the cutting that I did for those guys and go, well, look at these triangles over here on the side, Leanne. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm Scottish and I couldn't bear to see those just sit off to be wasted. But wait, they're not going to be wasted because what does this shape look like? It looks an awful lot like a side triangle, except that it's got a point on it. So let's get rid of the point. Let's do something about that and turn them into side triangles that look like this shape. So if we want to create something that looks like this shape with the little notch on the top, And again, we want 2 of them. When we cut these guys, we got 4 triangles, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to take my V-block ruler and I'm going to slide it down so that I can find another number that can sit on the bottom of my lineup of fabrics and along the side here, and give me the ability to cut using the broad line that says cut line for side triangles. Again, we're paying attention to the words. We want to know that the words are meaning something, that they're going to give us something. I'm going to cut up the side. I'm trimming a sliver off that way, and then I'm going to cut across the top here. And so what I'm doing is I'm cutting off what I don't need for these guys, and I'm getting a shape that I do recognize. That is now a different size. It's gone down 1 inch in size because I needed to get rid of the point. But now these can become 3-inch V-block units, and that's what this luscious pile here is. This is all the V-blocks in 3-inch size that I made from all of the cutaways from making these guys. So this could easily be a border around a quilt that I made with this. It could easily be star points within a quilt. Again, pop something different into the center and create a star block with those as the star points. You'll see that a lot in different quilts, that the shape that you see here when you replace it with colors becomes the star point. Hang on, I have another quilt to show you. I'm going to do a quick set change and we'll get there. Hang on. Okay, I'm back. I've got a different quilt up here, don't I? This is a quilt from a Studio 180 pattern called Doubly Charmed. Now in this case, look at here, we've got our V-blocks. Again, these are 3-inch finished V-block components, and they have the color. They've become the star points. So these little guys that were leftovers from me making the bigger diamonds could easily become the star points around a pattern that looks like that. There is a lovely chaining of effect. What's this guy in the middle? Say it with me. That's a square squared in the center. And look at these little guys that are super cute, super colorful. You can put anything you wanted in the center. It could be just a solid square, but I love the effect of what this does. How many of you can see the curving circular effect that's created from the different angle in the V-block and the angle on the square squared? So when we've got a different angle coming together like that, it creates the circle effect, doesn't it? Did you see it at the beginning, or do you see it now that I've pointed it out to you? I love the effect of this. I love the chain, the different size between the 9-patch chain and the square squared in the center. And these were all the left off trimaways from creating something like this that was bigger and turned into smaller ones. And so to create my little ones, all I did was cut a strip of fabric that was 4 inches now. If I'm trimming these here down to work for 3-inch finished units on my side triangles, I'm going to cut 3-inch finished centers from 4-inch strip of fabric, the same way that I did with my green one at the very beginning. So they just become a little bit smaller, a little bit cuter, and look at how many of them I got. I could easily work this into another quilt like this, have it become border pieces up and down like what I was showing you in my first display, but I am all about, okay, if I'm trimming pieces away from these blocks and giving me something usable and left over, I'm going to take those pointy pieces and, like I said, take your ruler, slide it down. The line that we're looking at is the cut line for our side triangles. Slide it down to the size that we're looking for that works with the piece that we've got, and trim up the side so you've got a fresh angle on the side that's going to sew together with your center triangle, and then cut across the top so that it gives you that notch. Very important that you have a notched piece on there that you're going to be able to put around your center triangles that have been cut from a 4-inch strip. I now have enough to make one and another that are exactly the same for whatever kind of layout I want to have them come together. Lots and lots and lots of things there to be able to do with that, to play and to carry on. But wait, there's more. Hang on. Couple more quick things. Okay, I'm back again. So, last couple of things I want to point out to you. A couple of things that I have shared before, but if you haven't been watching any of my other videos, you might not have heard me talk about putting a product called InvisiGrip on the back of your rulers. It comes in a tube like this, 12.5 inches wide by 1 yard, 36 inches long, and it fits on the back of all of my Studio 180 rulers. They're very smooth template plastic and they can slip and slide around a little bit, so putting this on the back not only helps to keep them from moving as I'm cutting. When I put pressure on, it helps to stop them from moving. It actually also helps to protect the numbers and the words and everything that are written on your ruler. By putting a covering on the back, it helps to keep them from rubbing off as you've got them in your ruler bag or taking them off to class or however you store them, etc. So that's protective as well as helps to keep them from slip sliding around. Great stuff, highly recommend that. You've seen me talk about my cutting edge tape that I move around from ruler to ruler so that I can keep an eye on the markings on the ruler that I'm looking for in all the different sizes. I love that there are so many sizes on the ruler to work with, but sometimes there's a lot of lines to see. So I will sometimes use the cutting edge tape that moves from ruler to ruler, or the glow line tape. This is 1/4 inch wide tape, teeny tiny. You roll off what you need. There's 3 colors in there you can share with friends. You can cut little strips off, move them around as you need to. It goes on for a long time. There's lots on each one of those. And they can go on the bottom side of your ruler as well to highlight lines, and it doesn't take up a lot of space. These ones are too thick really to put on the bottom of your ruler. I don't like them on the bottom, but I do sometimes put the glow line on the bottom, and it really makes the numbers underneath a line jump right out so that you can see them. And of course my favorite pins, my extra fine glass head pins, because I don't want to be damaging my pieces as I'm pinning them together. When I have points that are coming together that I want to be able to line up, I don't want to be stabbing a big thick pin through them, and that distorts as I'm pulling the pin out, moving it around. It's going to distort, maybe damage my fabric. Batik fabric pins totally different from cotton fabrics, so extra fine pins are my go-to for sure. So I like to share things that work for me and things that I like to recommend in all of my classes. And you guys have heard me talk about the Blockbuster series that Studio 180 created. There are, of course, Blockbuster blocks for the V-block ruler. I didn't have time to be able to make some of the blocks, but check them out yourself. We've got a 5440 or Fight. That actually, I forgot to mention that. That's a really old name for that particular block, that shape. Oh, I changed that. Hang on, I'll talk about that in a minute. But this particular block, a really old version, really old name for this is 5440 or Fight, when those blocks are come together, etc. And there is a very cool, it's Blockbuster number 8 from close to the very beginning. It's got 4 patches in the corner, and V-blocks, not as star points, but they create a star in the center. So that's such a cool effect. And again, sizes for a 3-inch, 6-inch, or a 12-inch block. The sizes of the components that you need for each of those, super fun to make. There's another one called a 3-in-1 that uses the V-block and the Tucker trimmer to make 1/4 square triangles, combination units. There's your V-block. There's a Blackline Master here to be able to change up the color placements to create 3 completely different looking blocks. How different could those be? But each of those are in exactly the same place. I like to keep all of these in sheet protectors because then they go in my binder real easily, but it creates a glare on the video for you guys. So that's why I'm trying to hold them down underneath the upper camera this time instead. So how different are those when they're laid out exactly the same way, but color placement in different spots? Really fun to play with. That is Blockbuster number 9. So again, right close to the beginning, and number 10 as well. It had the sidekick high-low block in it, then just the sidekick, and a 4-patch. So creates a really cool windmilling effect on that. I love the look of those. That's Blockbuster number 10. So right back from the very beginning, utilizing more to do with your V-block ruler. Deb Tucker is all about that. She wants all of us to be able to utilize the tools that we invest in for so many different kinds of things. I'm all about that as well. They are an investment. I want to know that there's a lot that I can do with them. And if you haven't previously seen any of the free downloads, the same spot on her website where the Blockbusters are, there's also a little program called Units Made by Studio 180 Design Tools, and it lists all the different tools and the blocks and the technique sheets that you can utilize to create the shapes. If you hear somebody talk about pickets and quickets, you know that there's a technique sheet to do that with the wing clipper. Or if you want to know what the square squared can make, when I did the month for that, if you haven't seen that, I got super excited about that one. That was a great video to do. There's a regular square square, there's stacked squares or economy blocks, snail trail, little houses, birds of paradise, a pineapple that I didn't even get to touch on. There's just so much to do with that ruler. The Tucker trimmer has so many. Each one of her tools she's got listed on here for all the different kinds of blocks that you can make with the ruler itself or with the technique sheets that gussy them up and give you more opportunities. There is also the product checklist, or the have it want it list, she used to call it. That's where you tick off what you have, what you want, what you've heard me or somebody else talk about as you build your own little toolbox. There are so many ideas on here. Think about which ones you see as you go along and check them off. That's easier to remember sometimes than all the videos that you've seen and all the patterns that you've seen. Keep this little list with you when you go to the quilt shop, when you come to visit us, and you'll know what you already have, what it is that you're looking for. That also is on the free download page on the Studio 180 website. So check that out as well. Now I'm going to just close up by saying this particular pattern here, it needs a pressing, the poor thing. This is a little pattern that I made called Patio Lanterns. And this is a V-block shape. And you're gonna say, what? It can't be. But it is. It is a V-block shape that I have sliced and sewn halves together, just like I did with the diamonds that I created from the full V-blocks. These guys, what if you were to take these guys a bigger size, cut them into equal sections, and then sew them together to create a really new looking block. So that's my pattern here in the store called Patio Lanterns. And again, super easy to make from fat quarter bundles or stash fabric that you've got at home, etc. Great one for creating a theme. I've had several students that have done them in super bright Caribbean kind of color themes, or amazing in Christmas fabrics. This is a fall version that I made up, and change up the size of it based on the size of the end quilt that you want. Super easy to do. And then I was upstairs just today and looking through our bookshelf and came across the very new Table-tastic 2 book by Doug Lico of Antler Quilts Design. And he has got in here a version just like this, in a table runner version. So can't you just picture it now in a table runner? You can you can leave the blocks as half blocks like he's done in here, or you can actually do them as long blocks. I had a couple of students that did that. They created fewer of the blocks but made a nice table runner, and one gal did a long skinny coffee table runner, like a sofa table runner I guess you'd call it. But how cute is that in the book? And this is his new Table-tastic 2 version that just came out this year. I know I have loved making things from all of his other books, have taught lots of classes of them, and so many of these patterns are tuckerizable. Is that a word? You can tuckerize them, so tuckerizable, that sounds like a good word. Let's see if we can get that in the dictionary. But same kind of thing. It walks through the process of making a triangle square block, triangle in a square block. You might call it something else. You might use a different ruler to create it. But when my eye sees it, I see that, I see V block. And I'm going to be able to utilize the idea from his book, by the book, utilize that particular pattern idea, dimensions, the size of the blocks that I need, etc., but create it with the V block ruler. Change it up and make minis if you want. Make it a little teeny tiny one if you want, or go big. So of course, when I saw that in the book, I had to then say, okay, what else is in the book that I really like the looks of? There are some amazing little patterns in here. And we've got half square triangles, we've got picket fences, we've got flying geese. Who remembers the video I did with the wing clipper? Picket fences and flying geese, all from the wing clipper ruler right here. There's all kinds of blocks in here that utilize the wing clipper. I loved the looks of this pattern. This one is called the Abbey. And look at all of these flying geese around the edge here. Whatever line of fabric that you've got, Holly Taylor, Christmas, Kim Deal, Lori Holt, any of those, etc. And we've got components in here, again, half square triangle pinwheels, just like what I've got on the wall back there. We've got flying geese around the edge, and we've got a squared block. So all the ideas are there, but I'm going to create them with a different tool. But I'm certainly excited to look through the book. We have several of them in the store. We have more on the way. If this is something that you're interested in, check it out on the website. You can pre-order them if we don't have any left at the moment. And this is so sweet in the Halloween fabrics that we have upstairs at the moment. So check out what's in here. I love his books. I love his instructions. I love the way his mind works when he's writing his patterns. I may change how I make my flying geese, but I love how he lays out the fabrics and the cutting and all that kind of stuff. It's a neat process. I love to take away a lot from all the different designers that I come across. And like I said, I'm a sponge. I absorb all kinds of different information. So I hope you've enjoyed what I wanted to share with the V-Block. There's so much more that I could have gone into. I have a whole ream of other samples and other things expanding even farther, but this gives you an idea of how versatile this block and this tool can be. I love it. The shape of it is unusual, the shape of it is unique, but it does so much to create this amazing triangle in a square block. You can see just on the packaging, she's got some ideas for you for border kinds of ideas with the V-block shape itself. And I had great fun sharing that with you guys today. If you've got any questions, you know where to reach me. I'm at Quilter's Cupboard in Uxbridge, Ontario. And this is another version of my But Wait, There's More videos. Wait till you see what I've got lined up for next month. Come back again and take good care, everyone. Bye-bye.